If there's anybody watching this that, let's say, loved Batman Forever and went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation, if I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
What if your biggest dream turned into the biggest regret of your career?
1, 2, 3, action!
In the late 1980s, after decades of failed attempts, Warner Bros. Decided to finally greenlight a Batman movie. Up until that point, the character had mostly been associated with that really campy show from the 1960s, but inspired by the huge success of Superman, they wanted to take it seriously. With a budget of almost $50 million, the film attracted a ton of media attention, but also a lot of doubt. People weren't convinced about Michael Keaton. After all, he was mostly known as a comedy actor, and even Jack Nicholson, one of the biggest stars on the planet, felt like a strange fit for this weird, risky comic book movie. And the director, Tim Burton, had only made 2 movies at the time, one of which was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Not to say that it's bad, but it's not exactly saying Gotham City.
Hey kid, what's your name?
I'm Batman.
And yet, the film was a massive hit. It broke all kinds of box office records, earned an Academy Award, and most importantly, was praised by both critics and fans. It was a significant change in tone. Instead of going bright, optimistic, and cheerful like Superman, Tim Burton went darker and grittier, and chose to explore the flaws of the characters as real human beings. Following the success, Warner Bros. Probably saw a ginormous dollar-shaped bat signal in the sky and gave Tim Burton, who had now established himself as a visionary, a lot of creative freedom for a sequel, which turned out to be even more intense and bleak. And while it did okay at the box office and with critics, it was not quite the cultural phenomenon like the first one. Don't get me wrong, most fans loved it, but to the general audience it might have gone a bit too far into the darkness, and much to the disappointment of a lot of boys hitting puberty, their parents didn't want them to see it. In some ways, the film underperformed, so the studio agreed with Tim Burton that while he can remain as a producer, they would find a new director to lead the franchise into a more family-friendly direction. And this is where Joe Schumacher comes in. But little did he know, what seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime would end up haunting him for the rest of his career.
You can fail the audience. That's where your failure really is.
By the mid-1990s, while not a household name, Joe Schumacher had built a reputation for being a reliable and versatile director. He was by no means a box office king, but he had consistently delivered well-received and well-performing movies. And it seemed like all the stars were finally aligning, and everything he'd ever done had led to this moment. Prior to directing, he was really into fashion and got his start in the industry as a costume and production designer, so he clearly had an eye for a very stylized movie. He was also apparently much easier to work with compared to Tim Burton, who would constantly bump heads with the studio, but perhaps even more important than that was his solid track record of making movies for what they called the MTV generation. The young adults who were raised with a TV could immediately call out something for being uncool and were highly influenced by pop culture. So although it seemed like a risk, he got the job and a budget of $100 million, instantly making him the director of one of the most expensive movies ever made up until that point. With him at the helm, the tone was going to change completely. He wanted to capture that light-hearted feeling from the 1960s, so everything from the neon colors to surreal sets and anatomically correct costumes was going to be much more campy. Michael Keaton was not quite a fan of the change, so instead, Val Kilmer was cast as Batman, and in combination with Jim Carrey, who was on top of the world, Tommy Lee Jones and Nicole Kidman to name a few, all the ingredients were there. And it worked! It was a huge success. It had the highest opening weekend of all time, got nominated for 3 Academy Awards, and while the reviews were mixed, a lot of people enjoyed it for just being silly, fun, and larger than life. And did I mention it made a lot of money? Yeah, which could only mean one thing. And this is where the story takes a turn. Batman Forever was such a money-making machine that while it was still in theaters, Warner Bros. Had already signed with Joe Schumacher to make a sequel, and had given the project a top priority by fast-tracking it straight away. They gave it an enormous budget of up to $160 million, and it was quite possibly the single most anticipated film for a while. There was so much public interest that the media was offering tens of thousands of dollars for any photos or information from the set, and there were multiple police investigations against people trying to break in, steal props, and spying. Everything about this film was going to be grandiose. Bigger sets, more action, more visual effects, and a cast with a global star power. And in the lead up to its release, it had one of the most expensive marketing campaigns in history. And in June 1997, people could finally see it. Although many wish they hadn't. What's interesting is that Warner Bros. Had made the exact same mistake, but this time in the opposite direction. So they first made a dark film and then a much darker one, then course corrected by making a fun one, only to end up going way overboard with the follow-up. It was a living cartoon to the point of it being a caricature, and the reviews were brutal. But before we dive into exactly what went wrong, I had to see for myself, and with a risk of ruining my reputation, hand on my heart, I don't think it's that bad, despite what George Clooney says.
It's so bad that it actually hurts to watch. You know, I'm terrible in it, I'll tell you. Joel Schumacher, directed it, and he'd say, yeah, it didn't work. We all sort of go, yeah, we all whiffed on that one.
I mean, sure, it's not great or anything. The acting is questionable, theatrical, the writing is 70% cheesy one-liners and puns, and it's campy to the point of it being ridiculous. But if you're not trying to take it seriously, it can honestly be a good time. I thought it was entertaining. It was silly, it made me laugh a few times, and the story was, dare I say, tight and even emotionally satisfying. Throughout all the silliness, they somehow managed to sneak in some compelling themes, like Robin struggling with living in Batman's shadow, Poison Ivy doing the wrong thing for the right reason, and Mr. Freeze trying to save his wife and redeeming himself. And something that no one can deny is the production design, the sets, the props, the miniatures. Basically, everything tangible you see on the screen is just so incredibly well done that it looks better than far more expensive modern-day movies. But either way, people hated it. It got ugly. And I think there are two main reasons, with the first one being a single word: toyetic. The actual main objective of this film was to sell a lot of toys. And that is not an exaggeration, like Mr. Freeze's blaster was specifically designed by a toy manufacturer. It was no longer a movie, but one very long toy commercial. And then Warner Bros. Wanted it straight away, which not only rushed the process, but alienated a lot of people who were still tired from the relentless marketing of the previous one. What I think is fascinating though is the way Joe Schumacher handled the situation. He took full responsibility. This is an interview he did over 20 years later in which he continues to apologize and says that he feels bad for the casting crew who have their hard work overlooked because of its reputation. It is a big contrast with a lot of directors who go above and beyond to blame everything but themselves. It wasn't even that long ago when the director of Fantastic Four had a full-on public meltdown when his film was negatively received. Instead, Batman and Robin was more of a wake-up call for Joe Schumacher. He talks about how empty and pointless it all felt, working on this massive franchise and just going through the motions. Just because you make one bad film, it doesn't mean that you're a bad filmmaker. Like the writer, for example, went on to win an Oscar, and basically everyone involved either had already proven their talent or did it later on. So that's the story of Batman and Robin. Have you seen it? Do you want to see it? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. I read all of them, and I'll see you in the next one.